It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
And welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Breakfast, right across your weekend. If you were out chasing property yesterday, hope that went well. You might be back into it today. Plenty of open homes around the country to have a look at. And of course, we are talking property 7 days a week, as heard on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Amazon. And it is a Sunday, August the 11th today. Hope your week has been a good one. Maybe a little bit of relaxation if you're not chasing property. I can tell you it's been a very bad week for the Donald. Yes, Donald Trump, showing that Kamala Harris has eroded any lead that he might have had. And I'm already calling it a win in November to the Democrats. So there you go. I'm going early. I think it's theirs to lose. But yes, I think that Donald Trump is going to find himself not the winner on election night. Now, coming up in just a moment, we are reflecting over the last 7 days. We kick off with Caitlin McGee. We talked about sharing space and a recent study on how to do things better regarding real estate ownership in the future. Also this week we caught up with Nick Hay about some of the cheaper housing stock in Tasmania. Very hardy souls that decide to live in Central Highlands, attracting buyer interest despite the temperatures dropping as low as minus 13.9 degrees. So very chilly stuff. This week we were also in Phillip Island talking about the 20th season of The Block with Camille Morris, and Krish was here. Now, she moved from Sydney to the Blue Mountains with her partner, and it seems that first home buyers are making the Blue Mountains home. So that is all coming up with our reflection point on your Sunday morning.
Powerful, up-to-date news every morning from 6 a.m. Know your property with us.
Yes, well, I think we can say that the policies of the last 2-3 decades have created a situation where housing is no longer just seen as a means of shelter, but a vehicle for wealth creation. And at a macro level, that's seen kind of wealth shift from younger, poorer households to older, wealthier households. So now we have a situation where we've got a whole generation that's completely missed out on the benefits of the housing boom. Their parents were lucky enough to reap those benefits, but now we've got this very asymmetric situation, and also a situation that really increases economic polarization, because if you're lucky enough to have parents who, had the money to benefit from the housing boom and amass a decent home, then at some point you might get an inheritance. There are many parents who are not in such a good situation to be able to help out their kids, and it's clear that kids aren't able to do it on their own anymore with housing being so out of reach. So yeah, we have ended up with this situation which is really difficult and is putting pressure on a lot of older people who want to help out their kids, have to kind of think of innovative ways to be able to do it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people listening to the podcast, particularly about this woman who decided to move out of her 4-bedroom bungalow there in Brisbane, as I mentioned, moving into this 10 by 4 metre flat, will be probably thinking, well, that is one way for me to alleviate this massive stress that my children have and just give up the home. Because as you say, not everybody can do this. And it was interesting to read that article because the mum said that she felt guilty. And I guess she feels guilty maybe because she's living in this large home by herself. And in the end, she just said, no, hang on, I've got to make this available to my son and partner and friends.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I guess that's it. She kind of looked, even if you kind of just look at it from an efficiency point of view, there's one person living in a big home. There's a bunch of people who are living somewhere else that I think was mouldy and substandard. And I think a lot of parents feel that guilt because they had it better in their day and they didn't have to deal with this kind of struggle. So, yeah, I guess she was just trying to work out what she could do. And luckily she was in a position, because she owned her home, to be able to think about doing this. And I should say, she sort of talked about the benefits too, like it was a bit of a sacrifice. She's moving into a smaller house, but it wasn't without its benefits.
And that kind of sort of brings us on to no question, there is this loneliness as people get older. And a few comments have been made regarding the inheritance from parents about the adult children learning to live with their parents on these separate dwellings on the same parcel of land. What they're doing is, as adults, they're bonding. It's a whole new way of bonding, I think, with parents, and they're fostering this sense of community.
Yeah, look, I think it's funny in a way because it's not new. If you look back at our history, we've always lived in community and tribes. Some cultures still do it. There's a lot more sort of family connection. But I think here in the last few decades, maybe we lost it. Well, as you mentioned, there is, it's been coined the loneliness epidemic, but a lot of people are lonely, and we do have a lot of people living alone, which doesn't necessarily mean loneliness, but there is a correlation, especially elderly people. There may be women who are divorced and find themselves with not only living alone, but with less superannuation than their partner and, figuring out, how am I going to deal with this? And I think the kind of social connection that this sort of co-living can build is really underestimated. So for older people to have that kind of support, I think she referred to the fact that the kids help her out with things or drive her to appointments, just having them around. But for the kids too, they've got the support of their mum. If any of them choose to have kids, they've got that great connection with a grandparent. There are all sorts of reasons why these kind of arrangements can work really well in building social connection.
Morning, Craig. Yes, that record week there a couple of weeks ago with temperatures up the high country, you could say it was subtropical, but the whole state was affected, but more particularly up the high country where it got to, the sort of almost second and third record coldest overnight temperatures recorded at Lyweenie. So it does make it tricky.
Now, apparently people are pretty hardy in Central Highlands because the demand is persisting in that area all year round. Domain noted this, especially for trout fishing, some of the purest brown trouts in the world, apparently.
That's correct, Craig. Look, the season has opened. It opens first weekend in August, so it is officially opened. Great Lake itself, where Maina, the main hub of the Central Highlands, that particular lake is open all year round, but the specialist fly fishing such as Arthur's Lake, Brady's Lake, and some of the sort of specialty fly fishing rivers, they open now, and from that, you do get a set of locals that want to recluse and live up there full time, but you do get a few locals, i.e. Tasmanians and interstaters from a diverse background. I know Gough Whitlam many, many years ago, he owned a property in Maina, has his own little fishing lodge. So you get the high-end diplomats and business people from Sydney to your mum and dad investors in Tasmania that just love the outdoors, love the wilderness and love the wild, clean air of the high country.
Now, tell us a little bit about the properties, because it was reported properties selling between $160,000 to $700,000. They're being snapped up by locals and some of those interstate investors. So there's clearly a little bit of an appetite for people here.
Look, yes. I think post-COVID, local Tasmanians realised that they wanted to holiday at home and rediscovered the Central Highlands, which has been, it has kept the market strong. We've seen land values plateau somewhat, purchasing a parcel of land up the high country is now around 100-odd thousand. But these, as you mentioned, 3 to 4 bedroom, 20-year-old shacks, as we like to call them, they're holding their value around that 250 to 300,000, and then better properties are selling up towards that higher 6 to 700,000. And like obviously those type of properties are well finished, well insulated. But if you're wanting a good solid base, mostly constructed out of colorbond or prefabricated materials, that we've found that 300-odd thousand is about the medium value for them.
You know, in terms of remote living, there seems to be also people wanting to live this lifestyle. I think it's probably a little bit too remote for me, but that doesn't stop many from doing it.
Look, I know some clients moved from North Queensland, Cairns, earlier this year to Wilberville, and they've sent me a series of photos of the snow and the week when it got to 12 below, and they find it's fantastic. So yes, there is people wanting to recluse of a complete opposite sea change from the tropics down to the ruggedness of central Tasmania, where you're close to 1,000 to 1,200 metres above sea level. You got to be self-sufficient up there. You're not relying on services, town waters, town sewer, town stormwater. The closest Woolworths or Coles are about an hour and a half away. They do deliver, but you got to be resilient and you got to be prepared to, if the snow does fall, to be snowed in for a couple of weeks. I know that hasn't occurred this year, touch wood, but previous years, you have to be prepared and be able to survive for longer periods of time this time of year.
Every week, we present so much real estate.
I know, it's been really exciting actually from the other side, and we also have one of the houses. So it's just been a wonderful experience and fantastic for Phillip Island. Really exciting so far.
What about the locals at Phillip Island and the people that you're talking to with the show going there? I mean, how much of the built-in excitement factor is there?
Oh, look, there's enormous excitement already. Obviously, the contestants have been here working and all the tradies, and it's been fantastic for local businesses. You know, they're obviously getting their smoko from local cafes and eating out and buying furniture, etc. from shops. So it's been fabulous and exciting, really, to just see everyone around, and it's given a real fantastic vibe to the island.
And I guess this has sort of come at a really great time because the market is, you were saying, softening somewhat. It has been over the last 12 months. So this television show is intersecting that crossroad of a softening market and a bit of a boost for it.
Well, we're all really hopeful that this will shine a light on how amazing Phillip Island is, because it is really such a beautiful, beautiful natural place with amazing beaches. And, you know, compared to the likes of the peninsula, the Mornington Peninsula, you get a lot more bang for your buck over here. It did go a bit crazy over COVID, where we sort of grew 50% in 2 years, sort of 21, 22. So the softening's only sort of been just over the 4% mark, 4.4, I think, in cows, where the block is over the last 12 months. So it's not all doom and gloom. We have bigger peaks and troughs than the capital cities. But yeah, you can certainly get some great properties here for a really good price.
And the vendors, are they being realistic at the moment in this softening market that you're talking about, especially around price expectation? Are they meeting the market? What's happening?
Look, it's the same as anything. You have some vendors that are quite realistic, but for the most part, you know, people remember what was selling in 21, 22, when everyone was dashing away from the cities to, you know, regional areas like Phillip Island, and we're just not achieving those prices, especially around the median house price. Prestige properties, they're still in demand, but yeah, there's been a softening, and there'll always be some vendors that are probably not in the present.
You're being diplomatic. They're not in the present. Yes, they're perhaps behind the ball game, is what you're saying. But they do come around, because we were just talking about sellers' fatigue, and you know, next minute that's exactly what they're hit with, and they get a little bit more realistic.
Yeah, I mean, like everyone's circumstances and situation is different. Some people might not need to sell, and those that do, they have to meet the market. So that's our job, to make sure that we're updating them with, where they need to be to sell the property, because we still have plenty of buyers around.
Yes, that's exactly right. So the property prices in Sydney were way out of our budget, and we didn't really have a choice but to move further away. And it did work out well, because for the price that we put down, we were able to get a house that we were really happy with the land size. Because if we found something like Sydney, it would have been at least 3 times the price.
Okay, so let's break that down. So whereabouts did you move to, and what did you end up doing?
We moved to Hazelbrook, which is the mid-Blue Mountains. Initially, we had looked around lower Blue Mountains, which is closer to Sydney. But again, the property prices were really high, and also the demand was quite low. We found that, we started our hunt back in early this year, and every single Saturday we'd be going up there. Sometimes there was only one property on the market, and we'd spend about 90 minutes driving each way for a property that was either not up to our standards or incredibly out of our budget. But we are very happy with the place that we have found. And really the only way we could afford that was by selling property that we previously owned.
You were saying that if you were buying in Sydney, that the cost of it would be, 3 times more expensive. So what did you end up spending in terms of buying where you did?
So initially our budget was, we were looking at just under 1 million, and we did find a few properties that matched our criteria and were under 1 million. However, we did actually get into a bidding war with one of the properties, and we found that in the end, these properties got sold for above 1 million. And so naturally we thought it's best to just increase our budget in the best interest of time. And so we ended up increasing our budget and found a property that matched our criteria for 1.2 million.
So talk to the Blue Mountains area where you've ended up moving to. Were you surprised at just how many buyers were moving into the area?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the demographic of the Blue Mountains is a bit older people, but we were really surprised to see quite a lot of younger couples just like us at the inspections as well, which makes me think, are there other people from Sydney moving out that way?
What about other friends and family back in Sydney? Have you got friends of a similar age that are saying, gee, we've just been priced out of the market here. This is crazy stuff for first home buyers to contend with?
I would say a couple of my friends are, just because of being able to sustain the quality of life that they want. At the moment, a few of them are still living with their parents as well, again, because of the way the prices are. So I wouldn't be surprised if more people start moving away from Sydney into the regional.
So what is the long-term view here? You bought in the Blue Mountains. Is it for a set period of time? Are you wanting to move out into another area? What's the plan here?
I think this is going to be a really interesting lifestyle change for us, and we're very excited because neither my partner nor I are city people. We love the mountains. So I think this is going to be our semi-forever home until we do end up having a lot more money and moving into a bigger place. But right now, I think it suits everything we need for at least the next 5 years.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.